All right, so the first step is basically loading the data into our Snowflake, and for that we have to go through a couple of steps. The first thing, we need to have a virtual warehouse setup, and then we need two databases eventually for each of the data set that we are going to use for this implementation. So we have the reference queries over here in the guide. So I'm going to take those queries and create a new worksheet in Snowflake, and I'll paste it there. And one thing we have to make sure that we have account admin role selected, because that's the user role that has such access, such permission to execute such queries. So I'm going to create these and I'll explain in a bit what they are doing. So let's execute that. Meanwhile it's executing, I'll explain that what these mean. So the first thing we are doing is creating a warehouse name transforming. It's just a name for an object that's a warehouse. And then under that warehouse we are creating two databases. One is raw and one is analytics. So raw is a database where we'll be actually hosting or storing our raw data, and then analytics would be the database where we'll be placing our data after the whole transformation is being done. And then you can see that we are creating two schemas under the raw database. One is shuffle shop and another is stripes. So now we have all the structure that is needed to hold the data is there. So we have a warehouse. Under that warehouse we have a database. Under that we have schema. Now next we'll be looking into creating the actual tables and then putting the data into those tables. All right. So before moving forward, you can see that still I'm not able to see any objects over here that I just created. So let's do one thing before moving forward is refreshing the page. So once the page is refreshed, you can see that now I have two new objects, raw and analytics, and I already mentioned what's the purpose of these objects. So the next step is basically we would like to put some data into raw database. For that we have to create a couple of tables into the relevant schemas that we created earlier. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to follow the step 2 over here, that is the table creation. So let's copy this, and I am going to remove this everything and paste it here, and I'll just go and one by one create all the tables. So the table has been created. So next I'll do is I'll copy this statement and replace it over here. So over here what it's doing is basically, if you can see that it's getting the data from S3 bucket that's being hosted on S3, and it's actually going to get the data from uh, the CSV that's there. So we are not hosting ourselves anywhere. This CSV is already done by DBT. All we have to just uh, execute this command to fetch the file from there. So let's execute that, and it's going to take a few seconds. All right, so it's done. You can see it's being loaded. Sounds good. So just to make sure that we have all the data available, we'll actually check all the objects once we'll uh, done creating all the objects and loading them. So I'm going to go with the next table, orders. I'm gonna repeat the drill. Orders table created under the shuffle shop schema, and next again would like to copy the data from CSV from S3, execute. It's being done, and then we would like to create the table under raw database stripe schema and create a table called payment. So I'll do the same, and same for copying the data as well. All right, so now we have all the three tables created and the data being loaded into the table. So we have to just make sure if data is there or not. So we'll do like static. And one thing I'm going to do over here is add a limit statement as well. So that's a good practice. Basically, we would not like to run an, unlimited query. Uh, so just don't want to consume a lot of resources, even though that data is not a huge data set, but still it's a good practice. So I'm going to do that and select all and execute. So you can see that we have results over here, and for the payments, and if I do individual execution, we can look at the orders as well. So this is how the data looks like. And then we have Jaffle Shop customers. So let's look into that. We have some arbitrary customer's name over here. So it seems like our data has been loaded correctly.